Welcome back to the Westford Select Board meeting of February 11th, 2025. We'll now return to order with Pledge of Allegiance led by Tom.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, if you look at the backdrop, we are in Millennium tonight, not Town Hall. If you're actually at Town Hall, come on down here. But we're still waiting for the wiring in the Town Hall room, so next meeting we'll be back there with fancy cameras and better video and audio. So, anything for open forum tonight? From the first, I guess, from the board. Anybody from the board? Kristen?
Just want to announce the Finance Committee meeting for Thursday night was supposed to be at Town Hall, but because of the audiovisual project we have going on, we will be back here Thursday evening at 7 o'clock for the FinCom to review the articles on the town meeting warrant.
Wendy? Yes. Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Wendy Gloyd, 16 Pleasant Street. And I am here this evening talking to you on behalf of the Westford LGBTQ Friends and Allies group. I'd like to express how our community is deeply hurting and has a lot of concerns due to recent national developments with the incoming presidential administration. Actions taken by the incoming president, particularly targeting transgender and immigrant portions of our community, have left many feeling angry, vulnerable, and disrespected. These measures threaten not only the rights of transgender individuals and migrants, but also the broader community. It fosters an environment of fear and erodes our confidence in our constitutional rights. It's essential for Westford to reaffirm our commitment to inclusion, respect, and protection for all, especially those at greatest risk. Our community's members who are immigrants and or people of color face heightened anxiety, insecurity, and are living in fear of ICE raids and deportation. This climate of fear undermines trust and safety vital to our community's harmony and progress. We held a support group for LGBTQ at the First Parish Church Unitarian last week. Several of our community members have packed to-go bags in case they feel like they need to leave the country to seek asylum, potentially in Canada. We also heard many parents and residents worried about driver's licenses and passports with gender indicators of X that has been mentioned could be confiscated by the incoming presidential administration. 3 weeks ago, I would have never imagined I would be here talking to you about this. We urge Westford residents to voice their concerns to congressional leaders about these harmful actions. We also ask the Westford community and select board to stand in support of all marginalized groups who are currently under attack. By fostering empathy and understanding, we can ensure that Westford remains a place where people feel safe and respected. Westford LGBTQ will be hosting ongoing Friday evening support groups at First Parish Church United, and with no end in sight. We will be there for folks till they no longer need support, which will hopefully come at some point. We invite all community members who are supportive from Westford and the surrounding area to join us. Thank you for your attention and your commitment to an inclusive Westford.
Well, so, yeah, thank you. And actually, this is something that we've been discussing informally, and I think in 2 weeks you'll be hearing something more formal from us. So, but thank you for doing that, because we are thinking along the same lines, just no matter how do we formalize that.
Okay.
But Tom or Andrea?
I just had a question for Wendy about, do you have a time that you're meeting on Friday night so we can share?
Yes, 7 to 9 p.m.
Okay.
And it's on the church calendar, and it's also being promoted. I will have an ad in WestfordCAT as well.
Okay,
To
good.
promote that.
Thank you for doing that.
Okay.
I was just going to sort of say what you said, Scott, is that the town and its officials are talking about this, are meeting about this, and yes, as Scott said, in 2 weeks, we most likely will have a statement to be made, but you being here tonight just, I think, reiterates what we had been hearing sort of anecdotally and informally, so thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy.
Did you have your hand raised, Sarah?
I did. Let me direct the joint. Good evening. I'm here just to do a little public service announcement about WestfordCAT's new initiative. So WestfordCAT is actually celebrating 20 years of operation in Westford this year, which is amazing, and a decade of local news coverage. So we're reaching a significant milestone with a commitment to local journalism through comprehensive print news and continued digital expansion efforts. We're building on a decade of community-focused journalism that began with the Westford template and Andrew Sylvia, you might remember. WestfordCAT has evolved into a multi-platform news organization serving the Westford community. Our transformation from a traditional cable access television station to a comprehensive local media center reflects our commitment to keeping Westford informed and connected. In an era of declining local news coverage, we're proud to be expanding our services to meet the community's information needs. We are launching a pilot program of home delivery subscription service in a bid to become Westford's newspaper of record. This trial subscription service represents our commitment to ensuring every resident has access to vital local news. While our digital coverage remains freely accessible, we recognize the importance of providing a traditional print option for our community. So the 12-week trial subscription will be running from March 3rd to May 20. It's being offered at an introductory rate of $27 for home delivery. And the digital access will remain free of charge and will continue to be available. We've actually redone the website a little bit. You might see a new look on there. And if you're interested in subscribing and having the news delivered to your door, you can just go online to westfordcat.org or give us a call and we'll help you out.
Does it come in the mail, or?
It's going to come in the mail.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that those newspapers used to hang on the box, but okay. Thank you.
Paper boy.
Yeah.
The
yeah,
paper boy.
yeah. Well, paper girl.
That's
but-
great.
Paper girl.
That's great, Sarah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Thanks.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else open forum? Is there anybody online that
I don't see anyone online with their hand raised.
That being the case, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Request to approve the following: a banner request for a 2025 registration drive, the Western Community Garden, Joanna Donaher as the applicant. The banner would be up from March 4th through March 14th, 2025, in front of First Parish Church. We have a request for a special license. The event is 2 truths, 1 lie, 3 pours with Westford Night. Applicant is Westford Historical Society, Linda Green. Date is April 5th, 2025, from 7:30 p.m. to 9 o'clock at the Westford Museum. And a flag raising event, the Armenian Program of Flag Raising in commemoration of the Armenian Genocide, Applicant is the Armenian National Committee of Merrimack Valley. That will be on April 25th, 2025, from 10 to 11 a.m. And finally, advancement requests. There were 3 of them, or town common advancement requests. First is Memorial Day signs being requested by Westford members. They will be up from May 23rd through May 30th, 2025. Suicide Awareness Month signs. See a New Sun, Nancy Cook is the applicant. August 31st through September 7th, 2025 would be the time frame for posting. And then Veterans Day signs, again, Westford members, November 8th through the 15th, 2025, for the whole week. Is there a motion to approve, subject to public safety comments?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have a public hearing, National Grid petition for a joint or identical pole locations. Mass Electric Company doing business as National Grid and Verizon New England, Inc. request permission to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way. The J.O. pole, Tingsboro Road, beginning at a point approximately 1,740 feet south of the center line of the intersection of Quarry Hill Road, and Forest Road. National Grid proposes to install one new pole number 63-50, at approximately 42.6 and minus 71.4 latitude longitude. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I assume that you're from National Grid, so if you want to introduce yourselves and
Yes.
introduce yourself, explain what,
Yes,
project.
Vazna Eng, 1101 North Andover, Mass, and here for National Grid. As you said, sir, that National Grid, we would like to install a new jointly owned pole 63-50 in the public way in between existing poles 63 and 64 in order to have a system improvement upgrade to the infrastructure of electricity utilities.
Me.
When do you plan to do that?
I'm
Assuming you get approval tonight, okay?
I don't actually know when, because this goes to a I can't even it goes to the I can't even think of the word right now, the scheduler, and then they schedule when it will be done, so I can't really answer that.
But I think as National Grid knows, when you do it, you need to notify all of the
Yes,
abutters
yes,
along
yes,
the way.
yes.
And our DPW director has reviewed this and does not have any issues with the request.
But he did offer a request on where to place the pole, though?
Yes.
And that has been approved by you all?
Yes.
Okay.
Any further discussion? So is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank
Is
you.
there a motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Once again, we're getting practice here. A public hearing to request to approve Master General License Chapter 138, Section 12, beer and wine restaurant license for Yokai Ramen, located at 165 Littleton Road, Unit G. Proposed manager is Alyssa Satner-Ruga.
If you're online and you're here for this article, if you could just raise your hand and I'll promote you to panelist. Thank you very much.
First is a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So I am promoting 2 individuals. I believe that they're all set.
Oh, okay, welcome. I can't see you, but if you introduce yourselves and just tell who you are, so we can, there we go, we're seeing people now.
There she is.
Hello, good evening. My name is Mei Hui Hu. I represent the applicant, and I believe my clients are also here. Yes, this is Elisa.
Oh, hi, okay, welcome. Is there any, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to have a very brief presentation. This space used to be the classic kitchen. They have closed down since the last, I would say last summer. The place needed a lot of work. My client took it over and has been working with the building department, and now they have put in a beautiful brand new kitchen. And we are proposing 25 seats with 1 bathroom. It's going to be Japanese ramen only service. We're hoping that with the beer and wine license, that can enhance the patrons' dining experience. But mainly our sales is still food focused. The proposed manager has worked in the restaurant industry for over 5 to 7 years. She used to work in a place where full liquor license was served. So she individually has obtained the proper training to serve alcohol, and I feel really confident that she will do a good job.
Is everything in order, Patty?
It appears to be, yes.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
Any other comments? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Welcome, and we got the one to go first, but just first of all, thanks for welcome to Westford, and now we need to approve we need to close the public hearing.
Right. So I'll move to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Okay.
And then we need to request to approve the application for a common victuals license for Yokai Ramen located at 175 Littleton Road, Unit G. Proposed manager, Elisa, if I get it wrong, I'm sorry, Sadanuga.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, and
Thank you. Welcome to
and
Westford.
Welcome to Westford.
hope
We
you
look
have
forward
lots
to
of success.
seeing you.
Actually, I'll probably be there. I love ramen, so.
There you go.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right, and we'll be in touch related to you picking up your common victual license and making sure that the paperwork is properly processed with the state, so congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for your help and for your time as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, good
Thank you.
night.
Have a good evening.
Thank you too.
Bye.
Thank you.
Next item is a request to approve a change of directors for the Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 12, all alcohol club license for the American Legion Post 437 at 114 Dunstable Road, Westford.
Sort of a bookkeeping thing, every year they change their directors and we need to approve it, and then so does the Alcoholic Beverage Commission. I think they're doing a change of manager at some point, but they needed to get their directors in order, so, yes, they all look good.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have a presentation from the Capital Strategic Solutions on the communications plan, and I'm sure that you've got those guys lined up, Kristen?
I do, yes. So I have just promoted them to panelists. So just while they're loading up, as you are aware, the Select Board authorized 2 years' worth of funding for a communications consultant. We went out to bid for that in November timeframe and brought back to you a proposal from Capital Strategic Solutions to prepare for us a communication strategy plan, as well as provide communication services. They came on board on January 2nd, and we had them working quite diligently January 2nd throughout the month of January. They did some work for us on the Power School incident, some promotional materials when Chief Dennehy was promoted, and some other things. So they're here this evening to give a very brief overview of their company, but they really want to hear input from you as board members of what you're looking for from their services and from getting a communications plan. So with that, I will introduce you to Nicole and Liz from Capital Strategic Solutions. They can give you a brief overview of their background, and again, I wanted an open dialogue from the board members of your input. So welcome, Nicole and Liz.
Thank you so much for having us this evening, and thank you for making time for us. I know that you have a pretty hefty agenda. I apologize for the noise in the background. I'll let Liz introduce herself. My name's Nicole Figueredo. I'm the CEO of Capital Strategic Solutions.
Hi, I'm Liz Kalajian. I'm a project manager at Capital Strategic Solutions. It's nice to meet you all virtually.
And we do have you want us to show your slides, Nicole, or do you want to share?
Sure.
Okay.
If you could do it, that would be easier for us.
Absolutely. Mike's bringing them up right now, but I think you could get started.
Sure. So Capital Strategic Solutions was founded in 2014. My business partner, Jennifer Thompson, and I are the partners in the firm. We met when we were working for the then town of Framingham to the city of Framingham. We are comprised of former municipal workers. So I was the PIO for the city of Framingham. I also supported Pinellas County Utilities. And we do a wide range of services. Not only do we do community outreach and engagement, we also do public administration, municipal finance, and a plethora of other tasks. Our approach with our clients is to define goals and resolve challenges that they have. We all know that municipalities are running with plates that are overflowing and they're short-staffed, and we just kind of offer a second set of hands when needed. And we go away and sometimes they invite us back in. We have the technical skills that allow us to build websites as well as manage existing sites. I was a webmaster and am very familiar with Civic Plus. And we also have the background of working in municipal governments. We're privy to the public records law as well as ADA compliance with all of our communications and the need to retain records. Our goal is to deliver sustainable benefits to the communities in which we serve. Next slide, please. So our project team consists of myself. I'm the project principal. Liz is the project lead. She's the one that interacts with a lot of your departments day to day. Patty Regas will serve as the public safety project manager. She sat in with us in meetings with police and fire and is in review of your emergency communications plan. Mike Casino is assisting with visual and website design, as well as Clara DiCavallo, and she's assisting as the communications project manager with social media. In the background, who people haven't met yet, is Libby Bowling, and Libby is a content editor for our team. Next slide, please. So our strategy is to conduct a baseline assessment. We're reviewing and integrating with your strategic plan once it's approved. We're reviewing your emergency management plan, and we're going to enhance your crisis and incident communications. We're evaluating and identifying opportunities for collaborative communications throughout your departments. We had a lot of great meetings, and you have fantastic staff members. We're also going to develop multi-channel communications to ensure consistent flow of communication and information is consistently going out. And one of our founding guiding principles is to build trust through transparency and open dialogue with stakeholders. With that, let's keep the conversation going, and we'd like to hear from you about what some of your goals are for us as a team, what opportunities you see ahead for Westford, and what challenges as well.
And just to couch that, as Nicole alluded to, they've met with all of our departments. I think they may have one or two outstanding and have gathered feedback, but really we would like your feedback this evening.
Did they write the press release for the grant for the fire department?
Yes, they did.
That was really well done. That was really well. And I think that, and Chief Dennehy's announcement, they were level of professionalism above what we usually would do ourselves. So very, very nice. But yes, comments from Tom.
Do you want to go first? You good?
No.
Okay. Okay. Hi. So yeah, no, I'm happy to go. No, I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is to feel like we're getting good engagement with the community, both to know that we're representing their interests and also to get their involvement. And I think that there are a lot of great, towns that are about our size, that are about our resources in the Commonwealth and the country. And I'd love to feel like we're operating at some best practice level and have some way to measure that. So I know it's going to be challenging regardless. I don't think anyone probably does this perfectly and has 100% engagement routinely with every citizen. But there's probably some way, some set of methods we can do that are sustainable for us, sustainable for town staff to perform once we no longer have your services in a couple of years. And I would just like to feel like, we've made this a priority and we've gotten, great at it relative to our peers, and we really are doing better understanding where people are and doing a better sort of bringing them into the process. So that might look like, here's a design guide, here's a guide of practices, here's where your residents, are contactable, here's where they're spending time digitally, and here's what the best towns are doing in terms of frequency and action to get great engagement.
Anybody else?
And then I think, Tom, following up on what you said, is when you folks leave, that we have a blueprint as to how to keep this going, and so that we know what to do, so that we can continue, you know, the engagement, hopefully that we will have obtained or sustained by that time, and that when you folks leave, it just doesn't fall off the board, so to speak. I think that's the second part of it.
Yeah.
Well, that, I think, I mean, so it's sort of the quality of the writing, the presentation of your work so far has been, as I mentioned, it's been a step above what we used to do. But, the reason why I think we engaged in this process is, last year we had a failed override, and many of the comments from the town was, we didn't get the right information, we didn't feel like the town was communicating with us. And so we had done the very best we could, knowing what we know with our website, with other social media, but clearly we fell short in terms of expectations from the community. So, to Tom's point, what I hope we would learn from this over the next months and couple of years is, how do we reach all of our community from age, young to old, all the demographics that use different kinds of media to get their news. So you're the pros there. Hopefully you can help us with that.
And I guess just one level more, Scott, and thanks for bringing that up. I think we felt like we sort of lost control over part of the information that was out there. I think we were not sure when and what forum we should engage and how we should do that. When do we call, when do we engage and say, look, there's information to be corrected here? Do we just drive people to the town website? What's the right way to engage in that kind of dialogue? Because I think a lot of people ended up with inaccurate information. I mean, certainly we don't expect everyone to agree, but we would hope that they all have accurate information. And that's, I think we were sort of playing it as it went, and there's probably some best practice way to say, here's what we recommend you do to engage, to maintain trustworthiness. Here's the right way to respond to this kind of thing. If you see misinformation, here's the forums you should go ahead and engage in. Here's places maybe you shouldn't engage in, because it's not going to help your credibility. It's not a fight you can win. Like just a playbook for us to deal with sort of high intensity issues like that, whether they're an unfortunate event that happens in town that we have to do some kind of crisis management for, or whether it's some important thing like an override or some other important policy issue. I at least feel like I've got a lot to learn there in this context. I would like to have a playbook.
And I think as we move forward, like MBTA communities, there's going to be issues that arise that we're going to, who's paying for that? Is that town? Is that state? Is that developer? So those kinds of community communication needs are going to be arising to make sure we get the full story out, because we're already hearing.
We already know that there's bad information out there.
Exactly. We're already hearing,
certainly about the MBTA community.
Exactly. So that's one, I think, where misinformation is already out there, and how do we correct that in a way that is helpful and not confrontational. John?
Yeah, I think my concern is, of course, the misinformation is out there, but which platforms do we engage in? How do we engage with that different platforms? For example, I heard somebody on Facebook put out that we were going to take down 500 trees down there around Drew Farms for some reason or another, for that laydown area or something like that. So there's a lot of information that's bad out there. So the question is, how do you deal with that, and at what level? And what's that fine line between trying to influence versus just trying to inform? I wouldn't want us to come into trying to necessarily influence opinion. That opinion is theirs, so we need to just get the information out there, make sure that we get the right information. So it's just, how do we interact with those different platforms? How do we even know what's going on in those different platforms? Because there are different groups, different, it could be Facebook, it could be some of those other things going on. So just, a policy, just how we deal with that.
Chris?
Yeah, so I think we've talked a lot about how do we push information out, but I also want us to be able to hear from our constituents, whether it's, I guess for us, it's you hear from family members, friends, maybe you're on Facebook. I hardly think that's the best and most complete way of getting the information. We did last year, engage a survey platform, and we put out a number of different surveys. I think our first community survey gave us feedback that we weren't communicating very well, so that was helpful. But and that's one of the reasons why you're here with us. But I think we do need to get a better way of that bi-directional communication. So it's not just us pushing information out, it's also hearing back from the townspeople about what their concerns are, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong.
What we're not doing.
What we're not doing at all. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Right.
Seriously.
Just, we need that information. And I do also want to highlight, and I know you had on your presentation, coordination for our emergency response situations. We've had some stumbles in the last year. So I'm really looking, and I think the residents are hoping for a consistent approach in terms of getting messages out when there's a situation that may be occurring at our schools or at a town facility or somewhere else, but if it involves multiple departments within the town, we need to be clear in our communication. And so I certainly hope that your review and your input on our response plan pays off in that regard. One other question. You said that they've met with most of the departments. Did you include in that the school department? Are they?
Yes, they've met with Dr. Chu.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you.
Out of curiosity, don't need to answer it now, but we do have our own radio station that we would, in theory, could use in the case of emergencies. In practice, it requires someone to record something and then post it. So, yeah, I guess your opinion of, is that even worth having? In which case we should, it doesn't cost much, but it costs something. But how can we use it better?
What channel is that,
Yeah,
Scott?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Radio
You don't know?
No.
Yeah, Jody set it up when we had, go to this frequency for
I am
information on
having like a
storms.
total blank on this, Scott, okay?
Okay, well, no,
Like
we,
shortwave, or is it over like FM or AM,
I
or?
think it's AM.
It's AM.
Does anybody even-
We used to have in fact, I remember because when because 2015 we had the big, that 3-foot snowstorm. I remember the sign up from the old fire station saying, tune into, whatever it was.
Yeah, you're right, okay.
Yeah.
So we have it, and I don't know.
I'll
We
ask
just
Joe
don't-
about it because.
I wonder if it's, is it still working? Is it in existence or what?
Maybe we've just answered the question, Scott.
Yeah.
This is fabulous feedback for us to have, and as we work through developing your strategic communications plan, we're going to kind of work through this list as well as the lists that your departments have provided to us. We're going to give you insights on our layered communications approach. So within minutes of when we're drafting, let's say, a press release, we wanted to hit, obviously, the select board, community stakeholders, the media, your social media feeds, and your webpage, all almost simultaneously within at least 5 minutes. So the same message is carried out. In an emergency communications type of situation where we're dealing with a crisis, we would use the same unified messaging across all platforms and make sure that, we've had those conversations, especially with your first responders and those departments, that this is the message going out and is going across all platforms at the same time so that there's a consistent flow of communications. I know myself, having worked in the city, I worked in the city of Framingham, and I also worked in Pinellas County. Dealing with emergency response communications can be completely disastrous internally and externally if they're not handled correctly. I learned that lesson very well in Framingham with, snow response. When you referred to the 2015 snowstorm, I recall that one in Framingham and being without power for days myself at home and driving the mayor around town and all kinds of things. So yes, we will work through all of these items. Our goal is to leave you with a blueprint and a plan, but that plan's going to have to evolve even after we're gone, because the way that communication is nowadays is there's a variety of platforms out there, and there's always a new one to jump online with, and you want to make sure that you're capturing it. But whomever fills this role after we're gone, we're going to give them the tools to do it properly, and the way to do it well, and tips, all the tips and tricks that we have in our back pockets, we're going to hand that over to you.
Another thing I just want to
Liz, do you
highlight
have anything to add?
before we wrap up is they're also helping us with recruitment for jobs, helping us with graphics that we can put with job postings, because right now it's a very vanilla posting that we're putting out there. Liz worked really diligently getting our LinkedIn account unlocked. We didn't know who the owner was, and now she and I are the owners of that account. So not only posting jobs on LinkedIn, but the news as well. So in their short month and a half with us, they've done a tremendous amount of work. They've been Mike and I's, right-hand team already. We already feel a great amount of teamwork with them, and we hope that you do as well. So again, continue to provide us with the feedback, or you can go directly to Liz and Nicole. But we've seen already tremendous success with them, and we can only continue that, we hope.
They definitely jumped right in. We had, I think, our first incident with the power school issue before we even had our kickoff with them, so they were great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice
Good
to
night.
meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a good night.
You too.
The thinking was that when all else fails, AM still stays up. You could lose all of your internet, but AM always works, so.
We will check that out.
And while we're thinking things that people may have forgotten, because I ran a couple last night that forgot, we do have on Beacon Street, by the old highway barn, a facility where you can pick up a salt sand mix if you're a resident. So with the forecast for the next few days with snow, ice, and so forth, head on down there. The very same stuff you get in the roads, the high quality mix you can get for yourself down there for free. So just bring a shovel and a 5-gallon pail. With that, 735 item is the update on the Amoresco investment grade audit. I know we're all dying to hear something about that, Mike, so please fill us in.
Yeah, so just a quick update on where we are. So as you'll remember, when I first came on board, this had largely stalled. So that was something we took on just to really see where we were and how we could get it moving again. In the interim, we just went ahead and moved forward with several projects. We had a number of projects that were teed up and ready to go. We were able to start getting things moving while that investment grade audit basically kind of sat in a review period. So we did this so we could avoid losing all these incentives that we had lined up before they expired. A lot of these were things that were had been identified, but we hadn't really taken the next step to move the projects forward. So we went ahead and kind of jumped off of the IGA and moved into some Chapter 25, Section 14 procurements, and just started getting things done. So in that 6 months, we moved forward with several of the projects that were already on the scope for the investment grade audit. About 15 total we've got either under contract or completed at this point for a total of about $1.2 million. The reason that we chose those and moved forward with those is we were able to do them for an out-of-pocket cost around $178,000. So about an 85% leverage ratio. We just couldn't afford to wait for the IGA to move forward. We've got right now 14 projects that we're scoping out based on some incentives that we've got to get in place for this year before they expire, and some promotional incentives. So that did present some challenges with the way we looked at the IGA, because effectively we scooped out a lot of the low-hanging fruit out of that project. So, but we really didn't see another good option, and what we did realize at that time is we might have some alternative ways to fund some of these things, looking at incentives, looking at grants, looking at on-bill repayment, which is something we hadn't used before. And then I think probably most importantly recently is really taking a hard look at our net metering credits. We've allowed these to build up, primarily because as we've done projects, we're generating more savings. The net metering credit agreement that we had has resulted in significant credits sitting on our accounts right now. So we're continuing to look at how we knock some of these projects out with no upfront costs, use money that we basically already have sitting in these accounts. In looking at all of those different ways to finance projects, we've had to step back and say, all right, what does the IGA really mean for us, and what can we do with this? One, it's already given us a very good roadmap of projects we need to do. We know what our priority projects are, and we've been able to identify those projects that make sense with alternative financing outside of a performance contract. That said, we still see value in a potential performance contract. And we have met with members of the CASC working group, and I proposed to them the idea that let's look at the original scope. Let's figure out what projects does the IGA or does a performance contract really make sense for. And what we've come up with is it's really those projects that we don't have an alternative way to fund that's more advantageous to us. They have limited incentives, so projects that may not meet the scope of the Mass Save incentives, or we may not be able to look at grants for, or in particular, if they don't have incentives, we can't use the net metering credits. So it limits our ability to approach those projects the way we're doing all of the others. Projects that are on such a large scale that we can't do them ourselves. Most of what we've looked at have been relatively small scale. We're capping our individual projects at 300K. That kind of keeps us out of being able to look at things like building management system, which is a relatively low incentive type project, very high cost and a long-term payback, but hugely beneficial for us from an operating standpoint. And also solar. There's not much in the way of incentives around that. So with that in mind, we reapproached, after talking with CASC, we reapproached Amoresco about basically let's look at a narrow scope and see if there's still something there for a performance contract. So this has all occurred really in the last month or so. Had a meeting in person with them at the MMA conference and really sat down with them and talked through what we wanted to do. Tried to kind of bridge the gap of where we've been and you know, how do we restart this? We understand that we took a lot of the meat off the bone for them, but we both agreed we think there's something in some of these larger scale projects, and the performance contract may be a very good way to fund those. Right now where we are is looking back at that original scope. We've worked with Beacon to kind of flesh out a concept whereby we would stipulate savings from projects that we did with a third party and use those to kind of build them into the guarantee. We basically say, all right, we did these, we did them with another vendor, we're going to recognize these savings in the way you structure your guarantee. It's not uncommon, it's not super common, but it's a tool we can use and still retain that original procurement. So where we are right now is essentially back into the financial weeds. One of the big pieces that we've got to do, by we, basically Dan and I, is really step back and model out the net metering credits. That's a tool we haven't really used for capital investment. We've used it to offset operating, but eventually that's going to go away. So we need to begin transitioning that money away from operating costs and look at how do we use that for capital investment. To do that, we really need to project it out for the remainder of the contract term and see how much of this can we flip into basically one-time on-bill repayments and do some major projects. And so that's in my court and Dan's court right now, is kind of modeling that out. We've never really tracked all that stuff in terms of how it looks moving forward. So that'll be a school town finance operation where we just try to figure out, all right, what do we have that we can put into the pot for doing some of these big projects. The other big piece that we've got is going to be something that's going to be on the warrant in the spring, and that's looking at how do we set up a revolving account that we can use to fund energy projects. There's going to be times where we're going to need a little bit of money that we can use on a fairly fast turnaround to do local matches, to pick up things that the incentives or the grants don't cover. So that's one of the reasons we've got this on the warrant. The big thing we'll be using it for this year is actually to reappropriate rebates we've already received, to actually be able to pay for the projects that we had those rebates for. That was really an accounting exercise on our part, but in the future what we're hoping to do is use this account to recapture some level of the savings that we're getting from these projects so we can continue to reinvest it in more projects, because
really, I think our opportunity to use the net metering credits is going to depend on us being able to put forward a little bit of money to pick up costs that aren't covered and that we can't use those net metering credits for, but really trying to figure out a good way that we can spin that into capital investment. So you'll be seeing more of this, but the other conversation that's happening is with Amoresco about how do we salvage the IGA and try to pull out a performance contract that makes sense. It has to be beneficial for them. They typically rely on scale to get their value in a project. We took a lot of that away. So we're being creative with Beacon and with them and working with the CASC to try to figure out how do we put together something that is actually a beneficial project for us, beneficial one for the taxpayers, something that will continue to generate. And right now what we're looking at, most likely for a future IGA, what we'll be studying is going to be the Blanchard Solar Project and the BMS.
Building management system.
The building management system. So looking at getting a campus-wide, every single building in our portfolio under a single system. That may be one of our best bets for a financing mechanism for a project like that. So we'll keep you updated. Right now, it's in our court to do all the financials and kind of kick that back to them and say, all right, here's what we've got. Can you make a project of this? Once we've done that, we'll be able to give you a little bit more information, but we're expecting to have something at least in the next month in terms of getting information back to them, not having a project we can put forward to you. But happy to answer any questions on it. Chris?
And so if you can't make something work with Amoresco, do we have a sort of a plan B?
Plan B is we figure out an alternative way to do it. The BMS work is eligible for some incentives, and if the way we can model out the net metering credits allows us to either do direct on-bill repayment or use those net metering credits to service debt, that may be an opportunity. The solar, there's all kinds of different opportunities to look at there. I mean, I think our preference would always be to own the asset. That may not be the best way to approach it. I mean, we have to think about, on a solar system of that scale, do we have the ability to manage it? Can we maintain it? Are we better off with a PPA? Where basically we're not making as much money off of it, but our hands are freed up. We don't have, staff consideration is big for us. We've got to find things that we can manage, which is also helpful with the way we're approaching these projects right now, because it's relatively small, bite-sized pieces. I mean, we've got 10 of them going on simultaneously right now.
If we can't make it work, what's the sign-off cost?
We've got I think the termination clause on that is 58,000. That's provided that we get what we signed up for, which, the expectation is that we would work through that, but they still have work to get to a point where they have a final deliverable. Okay. That'll be something we'll have to talk through. The other consideration we do have is an MOU was signed between the schools and Amoresco to do the design work on the Blanchard roof reinforcement, and we really do have a breakup of $20,000 on that if we choose a different vendor to do the work, to install the system. Amoresco is one of the top solar installers. They do their work in-house. We'd be very comfortable, even just doing a solar alone project with them. Okay. So there's still something there. We're just trying to figure out exactly what it is, but we didn't want to wait on the rest of the projects. So
Mike, this sounds like the right approach. So the building management software, I understand. Blanchard, I understand. Are there other solar? It seems like there would be other locations for. Maybe it's a question. Aren't there other places that solar would be like a net positive investment?
Yes. Probably. That really kind of goes back to the goal we have with the sustainability outcome area for the strategic plan to do the solar siting study. The issue we have with Amoresco is we really have to stay within the scope of the current procurement. The current procurement was specific to Blanchard. So within that scope, we can approach the Blanchard roof as part of the original performance contract procurement. That's not to say we're moving forward with doing some
some level of a solar siting plan to figure out, all right, what do we really want to do here from a big picture? And that's part of something we'll be working with CASC on, and also NIMCOG has that as one of their potential projects they'll be doing for us. There's a lot of pieces to that, but really we need to understand the big picture on solar, and we also need to understand where grid is with this. Where's National Grid with their ability to let us interconnect? Capacity limitations on the grid are actually going to be probably a significant concern when we start looking at how we site solar in the future, whether they can actually take that back into the grid.
Is the same financing mechanism available for solar projects of scale beside Blanchard?
If we did them through another performance contract, but that's probably not the route we would want to go for a performance contract, because the idea of a performance contract is you're picking up a lot of stuff and you're using things like lighting that are very high return to fund things like building management and solar that are very low return, or potentially lower return, much longer paybacks. So you have a lot of lighting, you have transformers, you have building weatherization stuff that generates really, really good low-hanging fruit savings, and you fund the other stuff with that. We've kind of taken that away with the way we've approached these projects, but we found really better ways to fund them and better savings. I think for solar, part of that is if we do Blanchard or if we don't, ultimately what we're going to have to do is really engage with a solar developer and have them walk us through the project, walk us through the site selection, help us with the interconnection, the permitting processes. I mean, to do an interconnection, you might be looking at a 2-year process just to get through National Grid's process. So it is, when we're at a large scale like that, there's a lot of other moving parts, and that will probably sit aside from whatever results from the IGA.
Yeah, I guess I'm not as concerned about the mechanism. It's more that every project that has sort of a positive payback over whatever time frame we're thinking about is on our roadmap somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So if that shows up in the strategic plan with the solar siting, then that might be the right mechanism to track. But the concern I had is that if we sort of let the perfect be the enemy of the good and we cherry pick out of this thing, and so there's a whole bunch of stuff we can't do under the IGA, are we just leaving a whole bunch of stuff off the table? It sounds like you've got an approach to try to make sure everything that is a good opportunity shows up somehow.
I personally think, based on what I've looked at in the project selection sheet, that other than, and even the BMS, but all of the other smaller projects on that project selection sheet, including a number that didn't make it to the final cut, are most likely going to be eligible for, or suitable candidates for the approach that we're talking about, where we look at on-bill. If a project is on the electric side of the house, so take natural gas aside, if we're on the electric side, there are some level of incentives or something associated with it. Once something has an incentive attached to it, we can then use the on-bill repayment and then look at the net metering credits as a funding mechanism. And we have a substantial net metering credit balance, and it is continuing to build. So, I want to use those and push that into those projects as much as we can. The natural gas ones become a little bit more difficult, but there's an indication that National Grid may be looking at some changes that let us move from the gas to the electric side and back and forth with those credits, which would open up some opportunity. We don't know where that's going, but it was talked about in our meeting with the grid. So hopefully that's there. The two big pieces really are the BMS and the solar. And the solar, you've got kind of a whole world of different ways that we can finance through PPA, et cetera. The BMS really becomes, if we can do it through a performance contract with stipulated savings, it's a good option. If we can do it through a different procurement method like the Mass Higher Education Collaborative, that might be a good thing too. That, of course, is, we'd have to borrow to do that, but we would have to do that under a performance contract anyway. So there's options. We want to understand what they all are. When it comes to the BMS, our biggest thing is we need a procurement method that allows us to choose the equipment we are getting. We cannot do low bid on BMS. We do not want to get stuck with whatever meets the specifications. We want to pick our system. So
that's going to kind of guide the BMS side of the house. And frankly, we're still looking at what the options are. But the expectation is we're going to do them all.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Next, a request to approve a conservation restriction on parcel B of the Diane Lane subdivision. Plot number there.
So, as you may be aware, Diane Lane is before the town meeting this March to be accepted as a public way. The issues that we were discussing back in October have resolved themselves, and as part of the process, the Conservation Commission has been working with the developer to place a conservation restriction on parcel B, and this evening we'd be asking for your approval of that. It does require signature of the property owner, the Conservation Commission, and the Select Board.
And town council has reviewed it, right?
They have in detail, yes.
So I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And you will have a signature page this evening at the end of the meeting.
The whole stack. Consider a request to acquire an easement on Cloverleaf Lane as authorized by the 2024 special town meeting.
So as it states, the town meeting accepted Cloverleaf Lane as a public way in October of 2024. We've assumed the plowing and maintenance of that roadway. The final step is to acquire that easement. We do have that paperwork for you to sign this evening. Town council has reviewed that and it is in order.
I'll move to accept.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Next, to review and accept the Town of Westford strategic plan. Hopefully you've all got the revised version from Kristen, and I know, I mean, it looks, primarily we took the KPIs and moved them in appendix, but, you know, anything else you want to?
No, I really appreciate the feedback of the board at your last meeting. Mike and I sat with Raf Tellis, our consultant, the day or two after your meeting, and they reviewed the tape, so they understood your concerns for and against the KPIs being in the document. Ultimately, we decided to take them out of the document and not use the metrics for consideration or under consideration or draft. Keep them as the appendix, continue working with staff and boards and committees to build out those KPIs, and have the magazine type of document speak for itself related to the strategies. So we were able to circulate that to the board, and again, happy to answer any questions, and would look towards the acceptance of the strategic plan if you're comfortable this evening.
Looks good to me.
Yeah, same.
I thought all of our comments seem to have been incorporated into that,
Yep.
so. Is there a motion to accept?
So I will move to accept the Town of Westford strategic plan.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And with great thanks to Raf Tellis through leading us through this process. They were really terrific.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the board for all your input and support, and we look forward to using this plan moving forward.
It was nice, when we first signed up for it, I thought, make sure that what we do is we actually can accomplish something, and I like with the KPIs or whatever we call them, it was nice to say, yeah, we've got some guidelines and measurement criteria, so they did a good job.
I would like to also thank you guys for pushing back on the KPIs, because I think that gave us a chance to really think through what we want for those measures. I'm actually glad we weren't stuck with a lot of what we had in there, because as we started putting them together, we started thinking we could probably come up with something that might be a little bit more relevant. So thank you for pushing back on that. That was that made it better.
They did look like there were a few in there just to measure things.
Yeah, I don't want to count widgets.
That's so much fun.
Next, to discuss and support the Municipal Empowerment Act bill after, what, a year and a half of the legislature finally getting around to getting it passed. All kinds of good stuff in there, which I'm sure if you read the highlights of the act, but of course, if you wanted to give the highlights to us.
Sure, absolutely. Some people may be aware there was a Municipal Empowerment Act before. It did not make the session vote, so the governor has filed a bill again. There's been some of the same and then some revisions or some additions. I'll go briefly through these, but we'd love the feedback of the board. If you'd like to send a letter to the governor or our state rep and senator, we're happy to do that. I've also had meetings with NIMCOG and our regional managers meetings that NIMCOG is willing to send a letter from our group as well, so we can discuss that this evening. They are looking to expedite the removal of double poles, so the double utility poles that sometimes we see if Verizon hasn't moved their poles, but National Grid has. Supporting the prevention of drug overdoses, easing procurement of snow hauling services to align those services with snow removal. Right now, they're separate procurements. Expanding the municipality's ability to reduce school bus service costs. Creating a new property tax exemption for seniors, a senior means tested property tax exemption. I think Westford was ahead of the curve with the slider committee. We could see if that augments us in any way. Addressing long-term benefits for OPEB, which we discuss all the time related to our unfunded liability there. Creating regional board of assessors. I think this is more geared towards municipalities that are a bit smaller in nature. It may not be applicable to Westford, but would be applicable to other communities. Creating additional temporary flexibilities in post-retirement employment to allow retirees to expand their employment with municipalities for additional hours. Reforming the procurement law. We see this as a huge asset if passed for towns to clarify RFPs, Chapter 30B, the threshold of advertising for projects $100,000 and under. Right now, schools have separate procurement than towns do. This would align for that, so it would be a great help for us. And eliminating requirements to publish notices in certain publications such as combis. Supporting workforce challenges by centralizing valuation of telecom and utility property, not so much applicable to Westford, but in there. Updating the borrowing rules for school projects to increase the borrowing from 30 years to 40 years. I still am not sold on borrowing for 40 years. We can have that discussion with Dan O'Donnell if it does come to fruition. I think we're better off borrowing for our traditional 20-year terms. This is one we did talk about as empowering communities to generate more local revenue by a local option, which would be a town meeting action and potentially a ballot action to increase our local hotel motel tax, increasing local meals tax, and increasing a surcharge on motor vehicle excise. So I know that was one of the discussions of the budget task force and of the select board. So those are some of the high level items. I don't know if the board.
You forgot one.
Hybrid meetings. How could I forget?
Hybrid meetings,
We're participating right now, which does expire at the end of March. So we're very interested to see how that occurs. So thank you for that reminder.
And you forgot the sales tax on candy.
Sales tax on candy.
Yep.
Well, I don't know if people need more time to think about it, but it would be my suggestion that we send a letter to the governor, send a letter to our state rep and senator, and if NIMCOG is going to be sending a letter, that we certainly sign on to it as a member of their region. So I would cover all bases.
I'll take that as a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So, on to our annual town meeting, which, again, Saturday, March 22nd at 9 o'clock, Westford Academy. So first, we review the proposed warrant articles. Could we pull those up?
Yes, Mike is going to pull those up for you.
I don't have as quick of fingers as Kristen, so bear with me.
Take your time. So we do have a number of articles that I want to move through today just to give you a preview. The Finance Committee will be hearing some of these articles on Thursday night and making their recommendations. We did post a joint meeting for the Select Board. If you are all there and so choose to make any recommendations that evening, it will be public and live and appropriate. We will also make sure that you have ample time on your agenda for February 25th to make any recommendations. So it's not expected to make a recommendation on Thursday, just allowable if you are there. Also on Thursday evening, the Robinson School Building Committee will be giving a presentation on that article for the feasibility study. So really encourage you all as Select Board members as well as members of the public to watch that. John and Tom have been active members on that building committee and I'm sure can provide feedback on that as well. So we will go through the proposed warrant this evening. I do want to alert you that it was brought to my attention earlier this week that there is a request to create a new position on the pay and classification scale for civilian traffic control. I was at fault for not reviewing the general bylaw that requires a town meeting action to create a position. I would respectfully request the potential to reopen the warrant to add that, because we would like to get that civilian traffic control into place before the Boston Road details go into play this summer and other construction. Happy to talk with the board members offline of your comfort level. Again, I know this is a last minute request. You do not have to make a decision this evening if you want to reopen the warrant or not, but I do feel that that's a necessary position to have. So there may be one new article request, but again, up for consideration. So let me move through what we do have. We can come back to that article as well. I know there's members of the public here who may wish to speak on individual articles. I don't know if you're allowing public comment on the articles this evening. So Article 1 is to accept town reports. This is a traditional article. I really want to give thanks to Pam McNiff in our office, Vanessa, who's a senior tax work-off person, and Leslie and Ellen, who have been our editors of that annual report. We did not have dedicated funds to have Lynn Cohen help us this year, so they've been working tirelessly. Capital Strategic Solutions, who you heard from earlier this evening, is going to take that on for the next 2 years, so we don't have to have staff people do that. And I think they will be modernizing it and helping department heads and boards and committees through that. So again, just wanted to put a plug for those people under Article 1, but this is traditional article. Article 2 is to approve the budget appropriations and transfers. When you last saw the warrant, this was 2 separate articles. After we reviewed this with Greg Corbo, he considered that we could combine this into one article with one motion. Article 3 is our traditional appropriation for perchlorate expenses. This is continuing at $110,000. Andrea, I reviewed that again. We were at $110,000 last year as well for that perchlorate expense. Article 4, Mike alluded to in his presentation with the investment grade audit. We are looking to create a fund to perhaps create that flywheel for energy efficiency and sustainability projects. And if you have further questions, Mike is happy to answer those.
To clarify, it's an account, a revolving
I
account within
apologize.
the general fund.
And this basically just means that if we get a rebate or some sort of credit, we don't have to basically retire it through the general fund. We can put it in funds for the following
Yes,
year.
one thing we did internally on this is, moving forward, we're looking at having these rebates paid directly to the vendors, just to eliminate that step for us.
Okay.
But what we hope to do is be able to identify, some portion of savings on projects and reinvest them into this fund, come back on an annual basis, ask for town meeting to appropriate this money, and let us keep investing the savings.
Okay.
Not additional money, savings.
And-
This will really be the first time we're looking at additional money.
And town meeting would have a chance to vote on use of those funds, so if you, what's the oversight?
So we're asking you this evening, so right now we have in the language that the town manager and the school superintendent could authorize use of the funds. The alternative is the select board or the school committee could authorize use of the funds depending on the project. So we'd like to get your preference of what you would prefer in terms of the oversight.
The one challenge that we do have, and I'll put this out there, is we wouldn't have been able to do any of the projects we did this year if we had to wait for town meetings. So that is a consideration. If we can have guidance on the types of projects or perhaps limitations, we're fine with that, but we've got to be able to move quickly when we see incentives.
Sure. I mean, that's sort of like why we have in the Conservation Commission, why we have a conservation trust, a fund for the Conservation Commission, so that if property comes up, they can act and not have to wait. To get back to your question about oversight, why it could be a combination. It could be, with the approval of, town manager and the, as authorized by the select board. And,
Absolutely.
and the same with the school superintendent as authorized by the school committee, because at that point, it could be on a public hearing before either the school committee or the select board, and members of the public could come and offer, their comments one way or the other. So
Yeah,
I don't think it should just be Kristen and Chris Chu alone. I think that there needs to be involvement of their various boards.
totally agree.
with that.
No, and that works well with the timing, because any projects that we bring are typically gonna have a contract associated with them, so it would be coming to you guys. That presents no issues to us in terms of oversight or, getting buy-in on the projects.
Well, it's not clear in the way it's written that you're gonna have a revolving account and how that's replenished. You don't say anything about where the funds are really coming from in this particular article.
That
might be important, I think.
I think we may have a more up-to-date draft, but the way that this ultimately will read, for the first year, the amount that we're requesting be appropriated is $200,000.
Yeah, if you want to actually open, I apologize, if you want to open the motions document, that is more clear.
Okay, let me pull that one up.
So right now, it's reading that the town appropriate from free cash, so that's the source, $200,000 for the purpose of providing funds to address performing capital improvement projects within the town and school facilities.
So, and of that, let me clarify what that is. So we had in fiscal '24 and '25, we have received about $177,000 worth of rebates. Those all went into the general fund, but we paid those accounts out, we paid those projects out of accounts that didn't have appropriations. So we need to effectively put this money in this account and then reappropriate it so that we can pay for those projects that were paid for from rebates. So really, there's only $23,000 of new money. That's kind of our seed money that we're looking at as starting this thing off. The expectation is, once we kind of understand what our net savings is going to be on the projects, that some portion of that we would come back in subsequent town meetings and say, listen, we have saved X dollars, we'd like this, we'll put this towards operating savings, this portion we'd like to reinvest in projects. And then this is kind of working our way down that list from the IGA and new things that come up, and really using that seed money and future savings to fund a sustainability initiative. But the hope, my expectation and my intent with this is that outside of this initial appropriation, every dollar that goes into this account is money that was generated net of all of our costs and savings, pure savings from energy projects.
So it's not gonna be a yearly appropriation.
It would be a yearly appropriation, and then whatever balance is left in that fund would carry forward. But it would be a yearly appropriation of prior year savings. We did X projects, we saved this many dollars in energy costs, we'd like some portion of that to go. We do intend the future savings, we're going to put that towards operating for sure, but we need some of that to push back into these because, like Kristen said, this is a flywheel. This will continue to give us more to reinvest and save more and more and more. And this won't just be we need X money. It will be, this is what we have saved, this is what we intend to save with the future stuff, and be able to prove that it's a good investment for people. We wouldn't be doing it otherwise.
Okay, so the town votes the money in at annual meeting, and what we're proposing is that the elected boards, in concert with town manager and superintendent, can release the money.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I like that.
Mike, could you just change the screen? I apologize. I probably told you to put up the warrant, but if we could put up the motions, it does have some more detailed information. Any other questions on Article 4?
Well, John, did you answer John's question about will it specifically state that you're establishing a revolving account?
It's not a yes, it does state.
No, I didn't see it.
It doesn't state revolving account. It says to appropriate the sum.
So you don't get the impression that it's gonna be replenished by
But
savings.
after the
You have to
20
keep appropriating every year.
Right, but it sounds like, unlike our revolving accounts, where, the money, the town is appropriating the money, this is money that's coming from savings that we're putting in as opposed to out of our budget.
Because you're gonna put some savings in, not all, so you can't authorize a random number.
Is your point, though, it should be called a revolving fund?
Well,
Or is
just
this
so
not
that
a
people,
revolving fund
so
because it gets
that,
exhausted each year?
when the town meeting sees
It
this,
may
they
not get
understand
exhausted
it.
each year. It depends on what project
So
comes into
maybe,
play.
so it may be a revolving fund.
It may be.
Yeah.
Okay.
We will
And then
double
you-
check it with
And then
council.
you supplement that.
Yeah, so I think
Every
for-
year,
if you
depending
could double
upon
check
how
on
much
the-
payback.
Yep.
on the appropriate language,
Yep.
that might be good.
Okay. All right.
Article 5.
Let's put up Article 5. So Article 5 is our traditional capital article. The Capital Planning Committee has reviewed these. We have several motions associated with capital. The first is for about $3 million for capital projects. You'll note that that is higher than what we presented at the last meeting. The reason for that is the Community Preservation Committee did not approve the they did not vote on the lighting project at Westford Academy Field. We are still double checking whether or not they need to vote on that or not, whether it can go on the
They have to,
warrant.
I believe they have to vote.
So they have not voted yet. They just dismissed it because they don't believe that it's applicable, but we do believe that it's applicable in terms of our council's opinion. So you will see that under free cash at this point in time, but there still is time to move that back to CPC funds if they do vote on that. So we're reviewing that with council very diligently right now.
Before we go on, the Abbott one, can you speak to that?
Yeah, go ahead and speak to the Abbott.
So another item that's possibly coming off tonight, depending on your action on a contract later, is going to be the Abbott wastewater school, or the Abbott
Treatment
Elementary wastewater treatment plant furnace. We have an oil-fired furnace at that plant. That's one that we discovered some incentives for, and we're going to give an experimental run at using net metering credits to pay for it. So we're actually going to electrify that building, get completely rid of the oil furnace, and go with an electric air heat pump at that location. There will be zero cost. We're going to be paying for it both with incentives and net metering credits. We actually just got all the information, got the approvals on it, and Jeff has an agenda item for a contract to do that on your agenda tonight. So that will be coming off.
So that's the 40,000, let's go back.
That is, yep, that is the $40,460.
Do we still need the $50,000? Because it says that it,
That is for the exterior wood
Oh, okay.
siding. I
All
can't
right.
get incentives for that, I tried.
okay, just asking.
The other one that I was just got a confirmation on today will be coming off is going to be the SUV replacement for Recreation Enterprise. We did get confirmation from the chief today that we've got a decent condition Ford Explorer coming off the line. They're having a few delays with the upfitting on the new stuff, but because we got so many vehicles with this last round, with the 24s not being manufactured, we do have one vehicle that we'll be able to repurpose, so that one will be coming off.
And then we have.
With that additional money coming off, are we putting it into the capital stabilization fund, or are we just not going to?
We're just not using free cash for the Abbott, and then for the rec enterprise, we're working on if there will be any indirect back to the fund. We do have 5 items under the water enterprise account, just over $818,000 for vehicle equipment, leak detection, new source investigation, Forge Village 1 and 2 pump station upgrades, and surveillance camera replacements. Then we have $1.6 million from the Stormwater Enterprise for the construction of the Reed Brook and Acton Road culverts. Those were under design. We have $170,000 for 3 cardiac monitors. That's coming out of the Ambulance Enterprise. So that's all under the first motion. The second motion is $1.385 million for our new pumper truck. And as we know, these are taking 2, 3, 4 years to come in, so we want to make sure that we're ahead of that. This will require borrowing, so it requires a 2/3 majority vote. And then we have $800,000.
We've got an old version up here.
I just got the new version
Okay.
from Dan's. And we have $2 million for the replacement of the Nutting Road community fields, which I believe Recreation has not voted a recommendation on that yet. Chris, is that correct?
No, I don't think we typically give a recommendation, but when do you need to have that done by? It
I
was,
would need it by the end of February if possible.
We wouldn't be able to provide it by
Okay.
then, so.
What, is your next meeting March 2nd?
Yeah.
Well, if whenever you can get it, we might be able to stick it in. I know we
Okay.
go to print,
I
I
can
think
put it on
that
the
week, so.
agenda.
Okay. So that concludes the capital items. Article 6 is a potential. We get bids back on the PFAS water treatment plants on February 20th. We actually received the file subbids today, and the numbers looked favorable, so we do have confidence that we will not need to raise more than the $24.5 million, but the water department has asked for a placeholder just in case with steel tariffs and other items coming into play since they originally estimated this project. So it is my hope that this will go away. We will know more next Thursday on that. Article 7, again, you'll hear more on Thursday evening and again at your meeting on February 25th about the Robinson School Building Committee feasibility study. The request currently is $1.6 million. This is going through the Mass School Building Authority process as Robinson School was deemed to be extremely deficient related to the reports that we've been reviewing and have prepared, as well as the review of MSBA. Again, this gets us into a phase of reviewing the project in terms of leaving it as is, upgrading the building, renovating the building, constructing a new building. It's a very detailed analysis of existing conditions, proposed conditions, site design analysis. So again, I don't want to belabor this evening. Please look at the report that comes through on Thursday evening with that committee in more detail. The Article 8 is Community Preservation Committee recommendations. They have a number here from Community Housing Reserve, the 10%. The Forge VFW softball field lighting project they did approve. That is why I included the WA fields in capital. If we bundle these and put them out to bid as one project, we do see economies of scale and savings in that. Again, we're still reviewing if the WA project will be voted on by CPC.
That's out of curiosity, how do you rationalize approving lighting for one field and not another?
Some members of community preservation believe that the WA Fields is a stadium. We do not believe that it's a stadium, and stadiums are not eligible for CPC funding.
Stadium? Okay.
Doesn't look like a
Okay.
stadium.
No. It's those fancy bleachers we have.
That's
Fancy-
right.
Fancy visiting bleachers, yeah.
We have Conservation Trust Fund for future open space land purchases. Andrea, you alluded to that earlier today. A transfer for Community Housing Fund balance for affordable housing for the WERAP program. Transfer from Community Housing Fund balance to Affordable Housing Trust for multifamily detailed needs assessment targeting specific affordable senior housing needs. And from undesignated fund balance for Meadowbrook Farm Food Insecurity and Sustainability Project. So the last one is the only private entity that has requested CPC funds this round. All right, then we get into our financial articles to authorize our traditional revolving funds, to approve the fiscal year 26 operating budget. And thank you to all who provided input and feedback at our Finance Committee public hearings. We still do have a balanced budget. Next article is to appropriate our Chapter 90 funds, standard article. Article 12 is to appropriate our water enterprise OPEB funds, again, traditional article. Article 13 is to adopt a veterans tax exemption for cost of living adjustment to make sure that we are mirroring the HERO Act of 2024. Article 14 is to establish a 300th anniversary celebration fund. As I discussed at our last meeting, many municipalities are coming up on their 300th anniversary of being an incorporated municipality, and many communities are creating funds where community members can raise money to go towards activities such as fireworks or parades or concerts or other memorabilia. And this fund would allow that to be those funds to be placed, kept with the treasurer, and then expended for those uses. I also envision potentially asking the select board, if this fund moves forward, to establish a 300th anniversary committee, planning committee. Many municipalities are doing that now as well. Some are partnering with other municipalities to do their 300th planning events as well. Article 15 is to authorize the select board to accept easements, which is a traditional article that you provide. Article 16 is specifically related to easements associated with the Stony Brook Bridge project. Article 17 is to authorize the acceptance of easements for the West Street and North Street pedestrian safety improvement project. Article 18 is authorized to accept easements for the Acton Road Culvert project and the Reed Brook Culvert project. We do have one zoning bylaw amendment related to floodplain. You heard this a few meetings ago from Jeff Morissette. That's currently going through the planning board process, public hearing process. Again, it's, in my opinion, very minor in detail, just making sure that our flood map language lines up with the federal flood map language. And then we get into general bylaw amendments. So I do want to make a few comments related to the adoption of the specialized energy code. Right now, we have that the select board would sponsor this article. This has been brought before you for the March town meeting in 2024, as well as October of 2024. And we respectfully requested that the select board give us some more time to review what this meant for the community, as well as for our sustainability efforts and our overall economic development efforts. So to date, we have met with National Grid to understand the grid capacity if this were to be put in place as it's currently proposed in July of 2025, what that would mean for the community. We've had the luck and benefit of our current building inspector, Eric Tardif, who you met at the last meeting, who actually enforced the code in his previous community, so he has some understanding of what the code means. And we've just had some more time to gather information. There are members of the CEASC here this evening. They held a public forum on February 6th, I believe it was, which was totally virtual, where the Department of Energy Resources and the Clean Energy Committee helped to provide a PowerPoint presentation with overview of what that code means and what it provides. And we also have the benefit of having a strategic outcome area in our strategic plan that we just adopted this evening that nods to clean energy and sustainability, but also nods to housing production and economic development. So what we have learned to date is that National Grid has some significant concerns with our grid capacity today. So if we were to adopt this code and have it be eligible in effect for July 1st of 2025, that is a viable option in terms of just adopting the code, but National Grid does not believe that they have the capacity at this time to actually service new projects that could come on board, primarily multifamily housing projects or commercial development that would require these upgrades to be made. So in speaking with our staff and gaining more knowledge, we understand that National Grid thinks it's going to take 2 to 3 to 4 years to actually study their grid and bring this up to capacity. So again, as the way this language was proposed by the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee for a July 1st of 2025 adoption, we would respectfully request that that be pushed to 2028 or a similar date. It's under consideration of what you ultimately want to do, but we do not believe that we would have the electric capacity to handle this code at that point in time. So I do want to just have that discussion this evening. If you're comfortable moving forward with July 1st of 2025, that may stunt our economic growth and our housing growth over the period of time because of the capacity of the grid. Or if you're more comfortable with going into an effective date further out, 2 to 3 years, knowing that we would have the code in place, that we could still move forward potentially with a climate leaders designation and other efforts that the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee are moving forward with. We've also been able to gather some more information from the Department of Energy Resources about the construction costs, and that the construction costs are greater if this code is implemented than if it is not, but that's just for your consideration at this point in time. So, Mike, I know you've been really close on this as well.
When you say our, National Grid says that our grid, is our Westford or is our statewide?
Statewide.
Statewide.
Okay.
Statewide.
That's why it's 4 years, because it's not a.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
the grid modernization plan that they have really covers all of the Merrimack Valley, and they've, as they said, capacity concerns are real, so.
Just on the capacity concerns, so, I mean, the way the grid's built, are they proposing basically, they're, like, if adjoining towns approved it, that would put stress on the grid that would affect us too. So I guess I'm just, they're basically saying that they just they can't guarantee they're gonna support if any communities move forward with rapid implementation. It could affect everybody and affect everyone's ability to proceed on a
Well, I
project.
think, if I understand their comments correctly, they'll eventually get the capacity. It's just a lot of it, I think, comes down to the way that they are projecting the demand. The way their projection models work is they're not contemplating a couple of pretty significant things. One is specialized code, which is probably the smaller of the issues. The other one is the MBTA zoning.
Right.
They're not factoring that into how they're looking at their capacity needs in the future. They are simply taking one project at a time. So a project gets a work order in, that's the first one that gets capacity. We've got, I think, 7 or 8 potential projects in the pipeline for the MBTA district overlay. Of those, the first one they had capacity for, the second one they didn't. And significant cost to the developer to do study, and then additional cost to do design, and then, of course, the grid upgrades. So the short answer is they can't tell us when capacity will be available, but they know it's eventually going to be available.
And so just even without this topic at all, if a bunch of programs were seeking approval and going through planning board and then putting in requests, some might be delayed or.
Depending
Right, so
on
we're
the
having
circuit.
conversations with the land use department, who's having conversations with the developers right now to potentially put in a full application to National Grid encompassing all of the potential developments, so that we're not stacking all the projects against each other, that it's one comprehensive and cohesive project. And we're also contacting the state so that they understand that they are telling the municipalities, we need you to build more housing. We're asking them, do you understand that we have these grid concerns that may potentially prohibit us from building these housing units or building economic development in general?
Andrea?
So I have a couple of thoughts. So first of all, I think what's clear here is that we have two, at least what are being presented to us as opposing goals.
Right.
Building housing, grid saying they don't have the capacity, okay? Somehow, we need, not just we, but communities in general, need to mesh those two goals. I mean, quite frankly, the state should have thought about this when they were you're thinking about the MBTA, obviously. They didn't. So I am not inclined to give National Grid a large, long runway, okay? I know from experience, I've seen it. They're saying 4 years, Mike. It'll be 10 if you don't put pressure on them, okay? If the communities don't put pressure on them, if the DPU of the state doesn't put pressure on them, if the governor doesn't put pressure on them, they'll just keep, extending this out forever. So I think the way to counteract, and maybe I think July 2025 is too soon, okay? I mean, I think you're talking about 5 months, and that may be too soon. But personally, I think July of 2028 is too far. I mean, that's 3 years from now. And I think, we should talk about a compromise position in terms of when we might put these, if the specialized stretch code passes at town meeting, when we might put an effective date in place. And meanwhile, I think that if we in other communities are, putting this if communities are passing this, and if they're putting in deadlines that say, this has to be done by such and such a date, that is going to bring pressure to bear on National Grid to say, hey, you folks need to look at this and you need to figure out how to do that. At the same time, I think that we should be approaching Jim Arciero. He's chair of the Housing Committee in the, you know, in the State House. So I think he needs to be brought up to speed on this and to be informed on this. I think we should reach out, maybe it's through Jim, but, you know, the DPU at the state level really needs to get involved in this, and it's not just National Grid, because I'm probably pretty sure that NSTAR has the same problem, and Unitil probably has the same problem as well. So it seems to me that, you know, that the state needs to bring pressure on these, on the utilities, because that ultimately is the only way that they respond. And they're not gonna respond to, you know, tiny little Westford putting in a application for all of its projects. So, that's, you know, that's sort of where I'm coming from. That's my feeling. And I think, I do think that clean energy should be brought into these discussions. I also, you know, maybe you've already done this, Mike, and I just don't know, but everything you told us earlier tonight about Amoresco and what you're doing there, I think that's great. I'm hoping that Clean Energy knows all about that, because that factors into.
We got a working group.
Okay, that factors into it. So, I mean, I just want to make sure, because, you know, as Kristen, as you said, we made it part of our strategic plan. It was also a town meeting resolution. And, you know, it does give us, you know, having the specialized stretch code, if we become a climate leader, there are other portions to the specialized stretch code that come into play here that aren't dependent upon grid capacity. And so even if we're making those small incremental steps, taking those small incremental steps in that progress, I think that's something that we need to do. I mean, we heard from the town, we made this part of our strategic plan. We need to start doing something as opposed to just talking about it.
Right.
So-
And if we do adopt this at town meeting with an effective date that is later than July 1st of 2025, we can still move forward with that climate leaders designation.
Right.
That doesn't prohibit us.
And I think, you know, from what you folks have told us, that helps us, you know, and that, you know, opens up further grants for us. And so, I mean, I think all of that is important. And then finally, one last thing, I did attend the February 6th webinar, and I thought those folks did a great job. They were so much more concise and clearer than they were when they appeared before us several months ago. So I just want to plug that, because I think they did, you know, they took our comments and they went back and they were, you know, sort of reworked the whole presentation, and it was definitely much better. And for somebody like me who is not versed in all of that, was clear and understandable. So I just wanted to give a plug for that.
Do you know how many people were on that webcast? Because it was, I agree with it. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, somewhere in the 20s.
That's all?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was like 1 hour, nice, concise, to the
Yep.
point, yeah.
They worked, they did a good job. They brought it to us early, gave us a chance to review everything. It was, I think the timing helped a little bit, that some time has passed. They were able to complete their cost analysis study, at least on the residential stuff. As I understand it, they are still working on some level of cost analysis for impacts to commercial and multifamily, but they don't have that information yet. But they did have cost estimates on the residential side that we looked at and felt they were, you know, they were accurate.
Questions we had asked as boards, they answered in the presentations.
Yeah.
I thought,
Yeah.
yeah, great to see
You should
people
watch
listen.
it. It's only
But
an hour.
one
It's good.
observation, so we could, I think, I agree, even if the state would say that July 1st is too quick, they wanted, like, I think, 1 year, not 5 months, but,
I thought it was 6 months. I mean, I thought January 1st would be a,
yeah, but I guess you could pick, you know, I agree, 2020 is kind of, I mean, if you give National Grid a yard, they'll take a while, so, but you could pick a date that it was, say, July 1st, 2026, or January 1st, and then if it's a complete mess, the town meeting could push it back another year, but rather than considering all that ground up front, you could fight delaying action if you had to. John?
you know, I'd just be concerned if we pass it, and then we look at an effective date 2 years down the road. I'm not sure if DESC would react to that. You know, I think they're looking for 6 months or so.
I don't think they had a
Yeah.
Beth,
criteria that they had to.
you have to get to tell us who you are, sorry.
Yeah.
And we do have a few more articles to get through,
Oh,
so I know
yes.
we stalled on this one,
I'll be
so
quick.
Oh, yeah.
happy to take comments on this one.
Beth Perkins from Patriot Lane and the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee. So one thing I'd like to say up front is that we requested we're co-sponsoring this, and requested a January 1st, 2026 date, not the July date. Also, we have heard about the meeting with National Grid and the issues that they brought up. We asked on 2 occasions to be able to attend that meeting because we are co-sponsors and we knew that this is, the issues with National Grid are a big issue, and we were asked not to attend that meeting. We heard there were 12 people from National Grid there, so that was a big meeting. And we were given notes on the meeting and have compiled a list of questions for National Grid because we don't agree with some of the things that were presented in the notes, and we'd like some feedback and some more details on those things. So we also were not involved in the discussions of moving the date out to as far as 2028.
I don't think any of us were, so.
Right, so we would like to be involved with town staff to kind of do what you people are doing tonight, to see if we can come up with a compromise or a better approach. I did talk to Dylan, who's our representative and the one you heard at that meeting the other night from DOER, and he said that no town has ever come in with a date that's over 18 months away. This isn't written up in a rule book or anything, but he doesn't believe that they will look favorably at a 2028 date. So also what he made clear is, let's say we voted in a date of January 1st, 2026, and then things with the grid got worse or something bad happened. We could, at another town meeting, modify that date. So that would be another way of moving things around if we want, and we could still move forward with that climate leader status. So we do not believe, the subject here is the specialized energy code. We do not believe that code is the problem with the grid issues here in Westford. We believe it's these giant multifamily developments that are going in within a short period of time. One for, I think it was 500 units and one for 300 units, and they're on the same circuit. We believe that that was the major issue in this case. And I know we're short on time, make a case for how the specialized energy code actually makes things better, because for those big developments, it requires a passive house. That's the standard that you have to build those developments to, and it's a super low energy load standard. So we think things could get better for big developments like that if they were done with the passive house standard. In fact, I'm sure that's one of the reasons that the state is requiring that for big multifamily developments, because we want to get the load as low as possible for the grid. So, that's it for tonight. We would just ask that we have some more time to figure out the date, implementation date, working with town staff.
That's why I wanted a discussion tonight. I didn't really want to have a long discussion, but I wanted enough discussion do we get progress. So,
Right,
yes.
so we need to make a decision by February 25th on what we're proposing to town meeting on the implementation date. It doesn't mean that there might be a motion on town meeting floor to change that, so.
But maybe it makes sense, but, February 20, that's our next meeting.
Yes,
Right.
so your proposals, we come back at the next meeting.
We
With
come
a date,
back
yes.
and.
And I know
you
Mike
folks-
Edwards
you
spoke with
folks
Mike
talk.
Berlinski yesterday to give him some of this preview before our meeting this evening.
Right, but maybe, between now and the 25th, you folks talk, figure out if you can come to an agreement as to a date that we put in there. Is there, I guess, and then listening to Beth, they have a bunch of questions they want to ask National Grid.
We're happy to pass those along and
And I
bring
guess,
those in our meeting.
in thinking about sort of efficiency, Mike, you know, maybe you pass them along, and if there's another meeting with National Grid, you include these folks so that they can ask their questions, and we don't have to go back and forth with a third party.
I think the meetings with National Grid are really multifaceted, so we're talking about tree trimming, we're talking about emergency operations,
So just
tabletop
invite them to the part that involves them. I'm sure they don't need to sit through tree trimming, and they probably don't want to sit through tree trimming.
Just in the interest of schedule, I'm wondering if we already have our answer for what we're doing on
We
this.
Right now, we're just gonna work on the date, because the rest of the stuff takes care of itself later on.
We will do that.
So Mike and Beth, that works for you guys too? You can get together with Mike and come up with a date?
Okay, move on to.
Sure. So Article 21, in speaking with the animal control officer and town council, our current fines in our general bylaw related to dogs and issues with dogs are not up to date. So we're looking to increase those to come up with state standards. Right now, for the first offense, we charge $10. We're going to be upping that to $50. Second offense, $25, upping that to $100. Third offense, we currently charge $50, upping that to $300. And fourth and subsequent offense is $500. This is in line with non-criminal disposition through Chapter 140, Section 173A of the general laws.
This is on late fee. This is a dangerous dog kind of.
Dangerous issues, yes, nuisance and dangerous.
Just to be clear, if you're listening, it's not a dog fee.
No, it's not a dog licensing fee in terms of the clerk's office. That's correct. Article 22 is a resolution to accept Boston Road as a public way. This is a very peculiar state law that DOT requires a town to accept a public way before they start construction. We are not comfortable with that because we don't know what the final construction is going to look like and if there's going to be any issues with that. So in speaking with town council and DOT, they will accept if the town meeting passes a resolution to accept Boston Road, and then once the construction is complete, we'd go back to town meeting to request the full acceptance of the way. Article 23, as we discussed a little bit earlier this evening, is to accept Diane Lane as a public way. That is in proper order. And then Article 24 is a citizen's petition to change the date and time of the annual election from the first Tuesday of May to the first Saturday of May. And just for the board's information, I am working with Lori Shaw, the town clerk, and Jeff Goodwin, the facilities director, to understand the implications of what a Tuesday to a Saturday change would mean for town operations and costs and our poll workers. So we will be prepared to present that to the board at a future date. And then, as I alluded to at the beginning of the meeting, I may be asking to reopen the warrant on February 25th to add that one article related to this specific position for the classification and compensation plan.
So basically, civilian flaggers is a.
So what is I guess, what is exactly the position that you're looking for without?
Civilian traffic control. So right
one
now, no, so it's the position is called civilian traffic control. Right now, the only people that we can have on our roads directing traffic are police officers. The police department has written a civilian traffic control policy and procedure and has written a job description to create that position on our pay and classification plan that retired firefighters or a firefighter or a highway worker who's not working at highway could become certified as a traffic control officer and then work those details for us. So when we have so many details occurring within the town, we don't have enough police officers to cover those details, those civilian officers would come in and provide those details and be paid a rate to do that work.
Okay. So just as you're looking at this, sort of I know you realize it has to go through town meeting. I believe
Correct.
it also has to go to the
PAC,
Personnel
yes.
Advisory Board.
That is
And then
correct.
Secondly, the other question I have is with respect to our police officers, does it impact the union at all?
It doesn't, and they're actually in favor of this. They've
Great.
talked,
Okay,
and
I
they're
just-
very happy about this proposal.
Too. That was my question,
It's a great question.
too.
Yes.
So do you need a motion to reopen the warrant?
Not yet.
No, because we haven't closed it yet, have we?
We did close
Oh,
it last
Did we close
meeting.
it last week? I can't
We
even.
don't have any motion yet, so we have to wait
No.
till we get.
I mean, I guess.
We have something to add, which we don't have yet, so it'll be the 25th.
Yeah.
25th.
I see.
Okay.
And then I guess cost implications. I know if it were a third-party contractor, obviously they would pay for the
Right, so we build detail rates into all of our public projects, and then if it's a private project, they pay those rates as well, so it's no impact on the general fund. And we're not paying benefits for these people either.
What if it's a project that, we're doing in-house and they want?
We budget that in our project cost.
All right.
So it's no need for FinCom to take a position, that's the question.
Is it a new position? I don't know if FinCom I haven't dealt with a new position since I've been here. I don't know if they ever take a position on that. I will ask Dan O'Donnell that question.
Okay, which means I guess we need to talk about the order. Madam Moderator, do you have any opinions on? All right. I guess so that's it. We don't have to vote until next week on anything.
Correct.
Okay. Which takes us to old and new business.
Take that down.
And easy one is to request to approve Christy Bates as a full member to the Affordable Housing Trust Committee with a term to expire June 30th, 2025.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, Christy, and thank you. And next, a request from the Armenian National Committee of Merrimack Valley to sign the proclamation in remembrance of the Armenian genocide of 1915. Is there a motion to
So moved.
approve? Second. All in favor? Aye. Minutes for approval, regular session and release January 14th and January 28th of 2025. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And then for release, executive session, so to be clear, we voted an executive session 2 weeks ago to release. We need to do it in a public meeting tonight. So we're authorizing release of minutes we've previously said we can release. So there's a motion to release the executive session minutes of February 4th, 2022, February 22nd, 2022, May 19th, 2022, August 3rd, 2022, September 13th, 2022, October 11th, 2022, November 15th, November 17th, December 1st, December 3rd, all 2022, and then May 5th and August 15th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Board reports or updates. And appearing, 10 minutes report.
Sure. So the first matter we've discussed in great detail in executive session. We are asking you to authorize the town manager to sign a settlement agreement with Waste Management.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is to accept a donation from the Estabrook family to the Westford Community Gardens in the amount of $100.
Move to accept.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
The next.
And thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, with our gratitude.
The next item is to approve contracts. The first is, you see this annually on your February agenda, to approve a stop-loss contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts for our partially self-funded health insurance plan from March 1st, 2025 through February 28th, 2026, in the anticipated amount of $2.496 million was requested by the Health Insurance Trust. You will note in your memo that this premium amount is less than last year. The Health Insurance Trust had many conversations and decided to increase our deductible from $125,000 to $200,000 based upon our claims that we saw. We do feel that even if the claims go up slightly with our $200,000 deductible, that we will still be paying less in stop loss than we were last year. If we were to stay at the $125,000 deductible, we would have seen an over 42% increase in stop loss. So we felt that at this point in time, the way the trust is running and the way our claims are running, that we would be comfortable moving up to that $200,000 deductible.
How does that work? So if somebody who's on that plan gets sick, they have to pay $200,000 before the plan covers?
So if someone gets very sick, a cancer treatment or heart transplant, the town of Westford pays up to $200,000 through our health insurance trust, through the premiums. Once that patient hits $200,000, then the stop loss kicks in. Correct. And then the next two, Guardian Energy Management for the Abbott Wastewater Treatment Plant Electrification and Heat Pump Project, in the amount of $67,305, as Mike alluded to earlier this evening. And item 3, Tecton Architecture for the Existing Conditions Assessment and Elevator Feasibility Study at the Westford Museum in the amount of $29,600, as requested by the Facilities Department. This funding came through CPC, where there was just going to be an elevator feasibility study, and we decided that it would be prudent to also do an existing conditions assessment with those funds, because we don't want to just slap on an elevator there and not know what other components are available or deficient within the building. So that is what we have for contracts this evening.
Is there a timeline for them to do that?
As soon as possible.
You have an kickoff meeting next week, I think.
Yeah, we're having an initial discussion with them next week. It's, to point of clarification, the town meeting approval was for studying elevator and accessibility requirements. We had, our direct access actually did the accessibility audit of that building, so we're taking that information. We're basically doing the full study of that building that we're doing with all of our other buildings under the space needs analysis, plus the elevator feasibility study. So we'll come out of that with really a well-laid-out capital plan for maintaining and restoring the building for the same price.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're doing it quick.
But they anticipate completing this in?
I was going to say, yeah, I mean.
We're going to know for sure. We just kind of came to the idea that we really needed to get this study underway that had been in the court of the HPC and the museum since it was approved. Jeff Goodwin has basically pulled it into our office and his office, and so we're kind of jump-starting it. We're meeting with the architect to get a timeline, I believe next week. Fast track it
Okay.
as much as possible.
And really want to see, like, an assessment of the conditions of the
Yes.
building?
Yes.
Okay.
So do we, yep, very much.
Okay, there's a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Can we actually release the settlement agreement?
Yes, we can release the settlement agreement.
Because
now that we have funds.
I think so. I mean,
Yes.
congratulations to Mike and Kristen, because the settlement agreement with Waste Management was $110,000 thereabouts.
110,000.
So that was well done. Thank you.
Yeah, it was good outcome.
Good job. Glad to have it behind us.
And just for clarification, this was due to their recycling pickups throughout January through June.
Plus 4,000 for
Plus
legal.
4,000
Yeah,
for legal.
covered
Yes.
all of our costs.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. Well done.
Is there a motion to
I'll move
waive
to
reading
waive reading
correspondence?
correspondence.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.